Spirit team, what subject are we covering this week? The Cage is a quirky-looking home in the village of St Osyth, which is in Essex, England, but it has a history, a dark and spooky history at that. It wasn't always someone's home. In fact, it was used as a medieval jail to house 13 witches while they were waiting to be trialled for their so-called crimes of witchcraft. One of the witches, Ursula Kemp, was hanged for murdering her neighbours with black magic. Once again, I turn to my spirit team to guide us through this true story and find out their thoughts on it. Spirit team, the Cage House, is it actually haunted? St Osyth was a broken town, the desecrated monastery. It would have felt like the ends of the earth, said Marion Gibson, Professor of Renaissance and Magical Literatures at the University of Exeter. It was a society of people who were forced together, a kind of powder keg of festering resentment. Kemp was likely middle-aged, illiterate and poor, yet respected as a cunning woman, a type of magical individual who in exchange for coins or cheese could cure colds or place the occasional curse. One day in 1582, Grace Thurlowe, a neighbour, called on Kemp to help a sick child. Kemp recited a spell 3 times. "A good child, how thou art loaden." The boy recovered, but a disagreement erupted over payment. When Thurlowe's newborn baby fell from her cot and snapped her neck, she accused Kemp of causing the death by witchcraft. These accusations were rife in Essex, where the poor sometimes faked bewitchment to receive money given in pity, but back then courts tried individuals for crimes associated with their witchcraft, rather than for witchcraft itself, and nobody in Essex was above suspicion. Even husbands accused wives, children accused their mothers. Lord Byron Darcy arrested Kemp and threw her in the cage. This inspired his crusade against what he called sorcerers, wizards, witches and wise women. Did Ursula Kemp have any part to play in Thurlowe's newborn baby's death when she fell from the cot and snapped her neck? Did Ursula herself consider herself to be a witch? During the 1800s, the cage was rebuilt in brick and remained a jail until 1908. In the 1970s, a developer turned the cells into a living room and added 2 bedrooms upstairs. The house has changed hands on average every 3.5 years since it was built, with the exception of only 2 cases. One example being a man who purchased the property for £150 and sold it only a matter of weeks later for just £100. Since the cage was rebuilt into a home, it has been sold many times. No one seems to stay very long. Is it because the house is haunted? Is that why no one has stayed there? In the summer of 2005, a woman, Vanessa Mitchell, bought the house for £147,000. It had been on the market for several months before she bought it. Less than 4 years into her residence, Vanessa claimed her life was destroyed by paranormal activity that confounded investigators, police officers and the church. She saw objects fly around the kitchen. She was punched, bitten and thrown to the floor. Mysterious figures floated through her home and attacked her guests. During Vanessa's ownership, the cage became the most talked about active haunting in the country, according to John Fraser of the Society for Psychical Research. She'd barely moved in with her lodger Nicole when the haunted house began to reveal itself. Vanessa was making tea in the kitchen on the day they moved in, while Nicole unpacked her belongings. She heard footsteps and turned, expecting to see Nicole. Instead, she was greeted with the sight of a black fog drifting through a door. Nicole was outside getting more boxes out of her car. What was the black fog that Vanessa saw? Does black fog signify an evil presence? Downstairs, the former prison room and ominous wooden cage door were considered original. In the fireplace, Vanessa found an iron chain with a large hook that appeared to be a relic from the building's prison days. Later, while spring cleaning the home, Vanessa found decades of creepy old photographs and documents left behind by previous tenants. She also found a document among some papers in the kitchen. It was a death certificate of the guy that hung himself there 6 months before she moved in. The man that killed himself in the house 6 months before Vanessa moved in, why did he commit suicide? Was it because he was tormented by the paranormal activity in the house, or something else? A few months later, right after Halloween, even more strange things started to happen. The energy in the home completely changed. The volume of the TV was going up and down by itself. Fridge magnets flew across the room. Nicole saw a soda can slide across the kitchen table on its own. The old chain that Vanessa believed dated to the jailhouse days had started to swing violently at night, and the door to the hallway slammed shut with a bang. Then, at night, Vanessa started to hear the disembodied voices of infants. Why did Vanessa hear the voices of infants in the house? Who were they? What's the story behind that? Vanessa and Nicole sought the help of the local vicar, but when he visited the cage, the house was strangely quiet. That was until they went upstairs and saw the bath taps gushing water by itself. The vicar proclaimed something was not right with the house. He could feel it, but his prayers and holy water didn't change anything. Some time later, Nicole's boyfriend Jim moved into the cage. He didn't believe in ghosts or the paranormal, but after several months in the cage, he flatly refused to be left alone inside the house. The 3 roommates made a pact. Under no circumstances would we leave any one of us alone inside the prison for any reason at all. We began to plan our lives and daily schedules around that single unbreakable rule. But in October of 2006, Nicole told Vanessa that they were moving out. They were expecting a baby. The cage was no place for children. By then, she was slowly accepting that it might not be a place for any living being at all. To avoid being alone, Vanessa invited plenty of visitors to her home. One afternoon she invited Kirsty Williams and her husband Neil for drinks. Neil, who was serving in the British Army, was the first to see the blood. 20 or 30 droplets of deep red blood splattered the floor as if dropped from a pipette or a bleeding nose. It wasn't there when we arrived. Everyone panicked as Vanessa searched for a credible explanation. The first thing we're thinking is somebody has a door open or a window open and a cat's come in that's injured. Or maybe it was one of the crows that often flew inside the cage and smashed against its windows trying to escape. But they found nothing. What or who caused blood to appear on the floor of the home? Was the blood a warning of some kind? What did it signify? Understandably, Vanessa's friends were reluctant to visit the house after that. After 2 years in the cage, Vanessa had given up searching for rational explanations for the strange activity. She had come to terms with living alongside the spirit of one or more witches. Then in the summer of 2007, Vanessa felt unwell. I kept on going back to the doctor and he kept on giving me loads and loads of tablets. He thought I had pelvic inflammatory disorder. At the hospital, a nurse smeared cold gel onto her stomach and applied an ultrasound wand. The nurse saw the issue. "You've got a 5.5-month-old baby in there." But she refused to look at the screen. Being a single parent was not in her plans after a whirlwind romance. But raising a child in a cage was impossible. I knew that a baby was never going to be safe in that house. The attack seemed to increase as her stomach grew. Vanessa recalled the spirits becoming violent as well. I was looking in the mirror, and all of a sudden I felt 2 hands shove me, and I hit the floor, and I fell into the spare room. If I were to fall the other way, I'd have gone straight down those stairs. Who pushed Vanessa while she was pregnant? Was it the spirit of one of the witches, a jailer, or something else? Why did the activity start getting worse in the home when Vanessa was pregnant? As her due date neared, Vanessa asked a plumber to install a new bathroom. He ran, terrified, from the house after hearing heavy footsteps. A friend tasked with repairing an electrical fault in the cage told Vanessa that a force tried to push him down the stairs. The ghost who tried to push the electrician down the stairs, was this the same spirit as the one who pushed Vanessa? Once when Vanessa was watching TV, she saw a man appear but could only see him from the waist up, and he was gliding very, very slowly, looking at her, gliding past the beams. He had black, spiky hair, and he had old-fashioned clothes on, but I couldn't see him from the legs down. Vanessa sensed he could have been a jailer. Was the male spirit with the black, spiky hair Vanessa saw really a jailer? If not, who was he? After baby Jessie was born, he only slept in Vanessa's bedroom in the modern part of the building. She was angry that her life had been reduced to a small room. She had stopped going near the older parts of the building. One night she awoke to the sound of footsteps pounding up the stairs with a boom, boom, boom. The metal latches crashed against the door as if someone was about to burst in. It was so violent, so quick, she recalled, and my heart was beating out of my chest. And then, nothing. Vanessa became a nervous wreck as the attacks continued night and day. I was brushing my teeth and I was hit on the bum. In desperation, Vanessa confided in friends and colleagues. Wendy was a local police detective with an interest in the supernatural. I didn't realise how bad it was, Wendy said, recalling the day Vanessa begged her for help. The police won't do anything, Vanessa, Wendy told her. You're talking about something people don't understand. Wendy agreed to visit the cage. She didn't last long. Almost immediately after I walked over the threshold, banging headache. It felt like somebody was trying to crush my skull. And that old cliché, I felt like I'm being watched. I had a really bad feeling like something terrible was about to happen, she said. Things came to a head when something pushed baby Jessie off the bed and onto some drinks that she kept on the floor. Thank God the glasses didn't break. Vanessa wanted out before the haunting claimed her sanity. She had to come up with a plan. It was now February of 2008, and a winter chill swept across Essex. At nightfall, Vanessa found herself in the street, unable to summon the courage to go inside. She tucked baby Jessie inside her coat to protect him from the cold. She thought to herself, "What are you going to do? You have to go in. His stuff's in there." She took a deep breath and pushed open the ancient door. With Jessie asleep, she crept downstairs to press some clothes for the morning. Alone in the prison room, she pushed an electric iron across her blouse. And then an electronic song filled the room. She looked down at her feet and saw several toys had come to life. Jessie's Thomas the Tank Engines, 4 or 5 of them, all at once started chugging around my feet. Vanessa ran up the stairs to where Jessie was sleeping, but there, at the top of the stairs, stood a male apparition. She had no choice but to dash past the apparition to grab her son. Vanessa then put the house up for sale and moved in with a friend. At the end of the summer in 2008, she returned in daylight with friends to remove her belongings. When the driver pulled the van up outside, he saw in a bedroom window the shadowy figure of a woman. Who was the woman in the window the van driver saw when Vanessa came to remove her belongings? Was it one of the witches, Ursula herself, perhaps? The house remained up for sale. No one wanted to buy it. Any tenants who moved in soon moved back out. Various paranormal investigators and the media descended on the home. Vanessa also advertised the cage as a haunted holiday home and leased it to companies who charged visitors £35 to attend ghost hunts. During this media circus, some suggested that Vanessa had embellished her paranormal experiences, but Vanessa doesn't care. The women of St. Osyth are no strangers to accusations. Was any of this activity in the cage made up or embellished? Did the lingering spirits want the house all to themselves and didn't like that it was turned into a home, so tried to drive people away? Finally, after so many years of being for sale, in 2020 the cage got a new owner, who hoped to make a new start. Vanessa warned her about its dark past and paranormal history, but the new owner had no time for stories of the supernatural. Vanessa said she doesn't believe in ghosts at all. Is there any paranormal activity still happening in the cage today, or have the spirits finally moved on to where they're supposed to be? There is so much more to this story. I have only covered most of the main points, so do search out the rest. It's such an intriguing read. Vanessa also wrote a book about her experiences in the cage. As always, I shall leave it up to you to make up your own mind.